The idea that learning how to improvise bass lines is only based on playing scales and arpeggios is a frequently misunderstood concept by both students and teachers alike. So with that said, grab your bass and let's get started. A recurring scenario that often takes place is where the student applies all the correct scales and arpeggios over a set of chord changes, but in the end can't figure out why it just doesn't sound like the players they aspire to emulate. Firstly, what you need to do is learn to become hyper-aware as new sounds are introduced to you, as all new arpeggios and the related chord scales represent a series of identifiable colors for you to add to your musical palette. But there's a problem though, because just learning arpeggios and scales isn't an end unto itself, but rather a means to an end. Simply put, chord scales and arpeggios don't define the methodology to learn how to improvise. It's what you actually do with them that makes up that methodology for the mature development of improvisational skills. However, this methodology isn't just left up to chance. Stay with me. Another huge misconception is the idea that the content you would use to improvise accompanying bass lines is somehow different to what you would employ in a solo. This couldn't be further than the truth, and I've been saying this for the last 30 years. The musical content that you would draw on to improvise bass lines is exactly the same as the content used for soloing. Now, there's tons of ideas to draw upon when improvising, but the core basics, in my opinion, revolve around 6 concepts. I'm going to go ahead and play through a chord progression demonstrating an accompanying bass line, and then I'm going to come back and show you how I applied these 6 concepts to what I came up with. The 6 concepts that I used to embellish the chord tones of this harmonic progression were chromatic approach notes, diatonic approach notes, scale passing tones, scale sequence patterns, chord tensions, and rhythmic embellishment. Chromatic approach notes are notes that lead into a chord tone from a half step above or below the target note. You can also apply this concept using 2 half steps into your target note as well. This is how I use this in this groove. Now this groove is based on a C minor 7th chord, and when the chord changes, it goes to an A flat 7. I play something like this. Now notice that little motion from there to there. That's a half step below, resolving into the flat 7 and 3 of the A flat 7 chord. Now when leading back to the C minor 7, I'm playing another chromatic approach combination, this time using double chromatic approaches, where I start off by going 3 and root over the A flat 7 chord, and the double chromatic above into tension 9, and then up to the flat 7 of the A flat 7, and then double chromatic below the root of the C minor 7. Okay. Try a few of these ideas for yourself. Okay, so the next concept is diatonic approach notes. Diatonic approach notes are notes that lead us into a chord tone independently by a scale step. To understand the notes that would be used as diatonic approach notes, you've got to understand what the corresponding chord scales are for any particular chord type. Now, if we look at this riff that I played over the C minor 7th chord, which is basically this. So it's structured around that idea, okay, which is simple enough. It's mainly based on chord tones. Going to the root, root, 5, flat 7, root, flat 3, and then I'm playing here this F down to the flat 3, then flat 7, and then back to the root. When I play that F going down to the flat 3, this is a diatonic approach note. It's a very simple idea, but note that a lot of people say, oh, that's a passing tone, or these are passing notes. And they just lump anything other than an arpeggio chord tone idea or scale idea into being passing tones of some sort. It's a gray and murky area. You've got to be very specific about this. Notice we talked about chromatic approach notes. Those are chromatic notes that are involved with that. When we talk about diatonic approach notes, these are scale tones, but they are not in between two different chord tones, okay? That's another thing that we're going to look at later. So this is super important that you understand this. So the riff goes, it's right there. That's our diatonic approach note. Okay, so the next thing that I did was scale passing tones. And again, we want to be really specific about this. Scale passing tones are scale tones that pass between two adjacent chord tones by scale step, either ascending or descending. In this tune, the passing tone line is at the break. So you know when it goes like, that's the scale passing tone line where I'm playing 5, going down to the flat 3. The scale passing tone is 4. Then I just play chord tones down. So I'm going root, flat 7, and then down to 5. And then resolve to the root. So the next concept is chord tensions. These are upper structure notes consisting of 9, 11, and 13, and are also commonly referred to as chord extensions. These note choices add density and melodic contour that enhances the mood, feel, and the character of the basic chord sound without losing the character of that basic chord. So just before the break, there's a B major 7th chord, and I'm using a B major triad and a C sharp major triad to outline this chord. It goes something like this. And then that line, that break, brings us back to the C minor 7 groove. So what's really cool about using these two triads is that it creates a bit of ambiguity because the 7th isn't present between these two chords. We've got the root 3 and 5 from the B major triad, and then from the C sharp major triad we have the 9, and then the sharp 11, and then the 13, which really brings out this particular kind of rich sound within the B major 7th chord. Okay, so another cool thing that this line brings out is the next concept, which is called scale sequencing. If I take these two triads, the B major triad and that C sharp major triad, and I create an independent scale just containing those 6 notes, the 3 notes from the B major and the 3 notes from the C sharp major, it gives me what's called a hexatonic scale. Okay, so if I play that now from the B, this gives me the root, the 2nd, the 3rd, the sharp 4, the 5th, the 6th, and then the root on the top. Now you can clearly see that this doesn't have a major 7th in it, so it's like a Lydian mode minus the major 7. And then by organizing the notes in this scale with 2 major triads a whole step apart, it creates a scale sequence when you put it all together. So that goes like this. And then what you want to do is, by understanding those sequences, is not necessarily just playing it in that order, but kind of messing around with it to create some different and unique melodies. And that's what I did when I came up with this. Okay, that's scale sequencing. Now you try it. Okay, this brings us to the last concept, which is rhythmic embellishment, which is found throughout this piece. By employing the use of syncopation along with anticipation, creates interesting rhythmic embellishment to the scales and the arpeggios that you play. Sometimes it'll only take a simple rhythmic embellishment to change the entire sound of a particular arpeggio or scale. Okay, so it has to be said that all the subjects that I've touched on today are covered in great detail in my 2-year bass mastery course over at joehubbardbassvideos.com. To really understand how to get these concepts into your playing, you've got to learn these concepts in isolation first. This is what's going to get you to start improvising these concepts rather than just learning a few licks that contain some of these ideas. If you like this groove that I played today, you can find it in my book, Killer Finger Funk Grooves. If you're interested in becoming a better improvising bass player and learning great musical content from arpeggios to grooves, then subscribe to my channel now. If you like this video today, then be sure to support my channel by giving it a big thumbs up. And if you really like this video, then please check out my books, my membership website, and my Skype lessons. Until next time, practice smart, work hard, and play creatively.